Welcome everyone, this is Justin McCabe from 117 West Spirits, and today we will be making orange bitters. The end product will look something like this. This is our house orange bitters that we use for old fashions and tiki drinks like Mai Tai, and you can also make other types of bitters like these, which are aromatic bitters. And in another video, we may show you how to make some aromatic bitters. But for now, we're just gonna start with the simpler one, which is orange bitters. Bitters are a great mixer to any cocktail. And when you go back and look at the original definition of a cocktail, it includes bitters along with sugar, water, and spirits. The other thing that this guy here says, Brad Thomas Parsons, and this is actually the recipe from this book, which if you're looking at making bitters at home, or you're a bartender looking at starting to make bitters and start your own bitters program, which a lot of craft bartenders out there are doing these days to elevate their cocktails. He says in this book, and I agree completely, that if you feel like your cocktail's missing something, it's probably bitters. It adds a savory kind of flavor, and that will just make your customers or your friends and family who are drinking cocktails and sharing cocktails want to go back for another sip. And so what we're going to do today is actually a slightly different version of how he describes how to do the process. This is a really cool process that I got from a book called Liquid Intelligence by Dave Arnold. And if you're really into science and like nerding out about the science behind things, whether it's flavors or whether it's how to make cocktails, where the flavors in cocktails come from, and how to kind of control that, how to make clear ice, that book is great too. So usually people, and if you don't have one of these ISI whip things that I have here, this strange looking silver contraption, you can just use a mason jar, but you're gonna have to let it sit in there for like 14 days. We're going to complete this whole process in probably around an hour. Don't worry, the video is not going to be that long. What we're going to do is we're going to load up our ISI whip. The thing here to look at is it has a max fill mark. Do not exceed the max fill mark because you don't want this thing to explode. It is like a little bomb, essentially. But don't worry, I'm a chemistry teacher. I know what I'm doing. Unless I break Paul's camera. So... you're going to unscrew it, and basically just to give you the anatomy of this ISI whip while we're talking about it. Traditionally, these things are used to make whipped cream, right? But what the idea here is we're trying to increase the pressure and temperature of the ingredients in the spirit, and that will increase the extraction rate of all the flavor and oil and all the good stuff in there. And by heating it and adding pressure, it's going to kind of make all that spirit seep in to the pores of all our bitters and spices and fruits. And then heating it is going to also accelerate the reactions that are occurring and the extraction rate. And then when we release that pressure, it's all just going to shoot out back into the spirit, basically. That noise is the technical explanation and term for what happens. But so the anatomy of this is, here's where your charge goes. So you're going to have these little nitrous charges, and you load them up in these guys, okay? And we'll look at that later. And then this guy is just what you would shoot the whipped cream out of, right? If you put cream in here and charged it. And then the other thing is we're going to use that. So you do want to use this fitting because we're going to degas through that, but safely into a mixing container. So let's go ahead and get started with the ingredients. These are orange bitters. So the first thing, oranges. What we want to do is, and I'll kind of lace them out here. You're going to want to just use the orange peel. You don't want too much pith on there. It's all right if you get a little bit. You can see I definitely have some pith on there. Most of the rest of it doesn't though. And you want to cut them into like thin stripes, and you're just going to load this up with, basically this is 2 oranges worth of orange peel. These are just good old Valencia oranges. And it's going to be about 35 to 40 grams if you want to get real exact about it. And that's the amount of orange peel we're throwing in there. Okay. To enhance some of the bitterness here, you're going to also use some dried bitter orange peel. that is 15 grams, or about a quarter cup. And then we're gonna use just 4 cloves are going in there. We have 8 cardamom pods, but for these, you can put them in a glass and you're gonna wanna break them apart. So I'm just gonna use my muddler and just kind of give them a, little smash. And they'll end up kind of looking like that, just broken up. 8 cardamom pods. Then we're gonna do the same thing with the coriander, smash it up a little bit. The coriander is just gonna be like half a teaspoon. It's like barely a gram. So if you're using a scale like I have, you're not gonna really be able to measure out less than that. So half teaspoon coriander. And then half teaspoon or about a gram of gentian root. Gentian root is gonna be super important because what's gonna happen is that is your bitter component. Gentian root is a root. It lends a lot of bitterness, and these are bitters. This isn't Italian bitters. These are bitters that you're just gonna add a dash or two of, right, to your cocktails. So once you have all that in your whipping glass, or if you're using a mason jar, in your mason jar, what you want to do is make sure you fill it. And in this case, we're going to use rum. White rum is our spirit to extract in. You could just buy, if you wanted, some 117 West white rum to add to that. Our white rum is 40% or 100 proof. If you can, 80 proof. If you can find 50% or 100 proof, that's going to work better for you because it is much better at extracting. So what we need to do now is basically measure out about a pint of this. Okay, so like 2 cups, a pint, 500 milliliters of this stuff. I'm gonna just pour it in there, and you can see that you want to get it all covered. It's not quite covered in there. And there's a little mark in here so I can measure out what 500 milliliters are. It's on the outside too. And that should do it, okay? Then we're gonna put this thing together and charge it, okay? So make sure it screws on nice and evenly. You wanna make sure you have a good seal. Also make sure that your actual seal is in there, right? This is what this red gasket is. And then put that on nice and tight. I would also suggest not pointing this nozzle at your face as you go through this next part of the process, which is we're gonna actually load 2 cartridges of nitrous in there. The safety recommendations are such that they say only use 1. We're not obeying those safety recommendations because we really wanna get a lot of pressure in this thing. It is been safe. And then you can hear the gas going in. You feel the cartridge itself, the container, cool down a little bit. And then once that's in there, you can just literally, you can give it a shake if you want, but then you can just unscrew it. And it's a one-way valve, so that makes it nice and easy. If you want to know some cool chemistry, this thing is super cold because it lost a bunch of pressure. Then we add one more. You can see I'm having a little trouble screwing this on, but don't force it. Just find those threads and get it on there. You can hear the second charge. And you can leave it like this if you want, or you can unscrew it. Either way, I usually just kind of leave it like this. And then what we have here, I don't know if you can really see, but we have some like simmering water, okay? So I'm gonna actually turn that up to a boil now, and we're gonna put that in the water. And this is the other part of this process. You're adding pressure, right? And increasing the temperature to increase that extraction. And we're gonna let that sit there for half an hour.
A few minutes later.
Uh-oh. Explosion. And let's just let it cool down for a little bit.
20 minutes later.
All right, so now that we've waited for this to cool down, and you could even put it in an ice bath if you want to kind of accelerate the process, we're gonna degas it. and then filter it out through cheesecloth, or I have a muslin bag here. So to degas it, what you're gonna wanna do is cover up this spout here and then pull this trigger. But you can cover it up, the spout, with either a mixing glass like this. I wouldn't use actual glass. I would try and stay with something stainless like this mixing glass, or a stainless steel bowl, and you just invert it like that. And then you can degas it. And hopefully you won't get too much gas out. Once you feel like there's no more gas coming out, you should be safe to open it. And then you can unscrew the lid. And go ahead and pour your concoction through your cheesecloth. And you see all the solids coming out there. Looks like we've got everything. And you can see I've got a funnel here sitting right underneath my strainer with a cheesecloth or a muslin bag over it. And yeah, we netted a little bit less than the 2 cups we put in there originally. But nonetheless, it probably got all absorbed in the solids. To finish this off, we just need to add some syrup. Okay, so I'm gonna set this to the side. And we just need 2 tablespoons of simple syrup, which is 2 half ounces if you're using a jigger. You're gonna wanna use like a nice rich syrup. And believe it or not, even though you're adding that sweetener in there, it's still gonna be really pretty bitter. And what I do at this point, because we're basically done, is try and find the lid. Here it is. And just like give it a nice shake. Get that sugar dissolved in there. And there you go, your orange bitters.